I would never, ever normally keep secrets.
For 2 years, the public watched Jeezy and Jeannie Mai perform a love story that everyone wanted to believe was real. The reformed rapper and the healed talk show host. Two people who had been through their storms, done the work, and found something genuine on the other side. They spoke about each other in terms that made audiences feel something. They built a family. They had a daughter. And then one morning, Jeezy filed for divorce. Blindsided Jeannie with paperwork she never saw coming. And the fairy tale collapsed overnight. Most people assumed Jeezy would stay quiet, that he would let the separation speak for itself and move through it with the same composed, philosophical energy he had been performing in public for years. But Jeezy is talking now. And what he is saying about what it was actually like to be married to Jeannie Mai, the day-to-day reality underneath the polished Instagram aesthetic, is darker and more specific than anyone expected.
You don't want to do nothing to him because you love him. People lying to you, manipulate.
He is describing a marriage that was quietly suffocating him. A woman whose behavior behind closed doors did not match the version she presented to the world. And a man who reached a breaking point and made the only decision he felt he had left. The details are coming out piece by piece. And once you lay them all next to each other, the picture that forms is one that raises serious questions about who Jeannie Mai actually is when the cameras are off. Jeezy has been careful with his words publicly, which is itself telling, because a man with nothing to hide tends not to be that careful. He has given interviews where he acknowledged that his mental health played a significant role in why the marriage ended.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna write my list.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna forgive.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna forget.
But see, I'm looking in your eyes and I'm not really buying that.
I'm gonna forgive, but I'm not gonna forget.
He has said he reached a point where he had to choose between staying in an environment that was destroying him and choosing himself. He described getting up every day and playing a role, performing a version of a husband that did not reflect what he was actually experiencing inside that house. He said the peace he needed, the authenticity he had been working toward in his personal life, simply was not present in that marriage. The real people, the real energy, the real foundation, none of it was there. Those are not the words of a man who drifted away from his wife. Those are the words of a man who felt trapped and eventually ran.
I had to sit back and not say nothing about a lot of things, but this is my story, my life.
And insiders have been specific about what the dynamic inside that household actually looked like during the period before the filing. According to sources, Jeezy had already mentally checked out long before the paperwork was served. He and Jeannie were still sharing a roof in Georgia, but operating in complete parallel, crossing paths in the hallways, nothing more. He had reportedly made a decision to limit his interaction with her as much as the living situation allowed. That is not a couple going through a rough patch. That is a man who has already ended the relationship in his own mind and is simply waiting for the legal machinery to catch up. What drove him to that point is where the story gets uncomfortable, because Jeezy is not painting himself as a man who simply grew apart from his partner or realized they were incompatible over time.
Oh, we had peace. You know what I mean? We got real people around us. All those things weren't happening for me. I was basically like getting up every day, playing this role.
He is describing something more specific, something he felt he had to endure rather than simply outgrow. He said there were things he sat on for a long time, things he chose not to address publicly because he was trying to maintain his integrity. He described manipulation. He described people lying to him. He described an environment where the love he was supposed to be receiving did not show up in the ways that matter. When a man says he had to go as deep as his integrity would allow before deciding to leave, that is a man drawing a boundary at the bottom of something, not at the middle of a misunderstanding. At the bottom.
I don't know what God thought was funny, but he had me working with Mario Lopez, seeing him every day at...
Jeannie's public image has always been built on a specific combination of warmth, honesty, and emotional intelligence. She made her career on being the woman who said the real thing, who talked about her first marriage's collapse with a candor that made audiences trust her, who presented herself as someone capable of deep reflection and genuine growth. And when she and Jeezy got together, that image extended to the relationship. She was the woman who had healed enough to receive real love, who had done the work, who knew the difference between what she had before and what she had now. But there is a version of Jeannie that her own words have been quietly exposing for years, if you pay attention to the right moments.
As I've known from season 1, I'm always honest about things we struggled through. I was real, man. Sometimes too real for everybody to have an opinion about.
She has described herself as an intensely dominant woman, someone who runs her own business, manages her own teams, has historically been her own publicist and manager and lawyer all at once. She acknowledged before the marriage that she struggled with the concept of submission, that her natural instinct is to control her environment, to lead, to be the decision maker in every room she walks into. She said she wanted her man to lead at home, that she liked the idea of it. But wanting the idea of something and being able to live inside its reality are very different things. And if what Jeezy is describing is accurate, if the woman he came home to every day was the same dominant, controlling force she had always been, with the added pressure of a public-facing marriage that needed to look a specific way at all times, then the gap between what Jeannie said she wanted to offer and what she actually delivered may have been significant enough to slowly erode whatever foundation they had built.
I gotta be honest. Like, I don't know how to connect with that, right? And that's something that I'm working on.
Sources close to the situation have suggested that Jeannie was not just dominant at home, but actively pressuring Jeezy to maintain a public image of the relationship that did not reflect its private reality, the picture-perfect romance, the caption-ready family moments, the carefully managed presentation of a couple that had cracked the code on love and healing. All of that required performance from Jeezy, a man who, by his own account, was already struggling internally and did not have the reserves to keep performing a marriage that was not working. And Jeannie, according to those sources, was more invested in the image than in the reality underneath it.
It's as deep as I was willing to go to maintain my integrity.
There is also the question of what her motivations actually were, because one insider's characterization of Jeannie's approach to this marriage is particularly cutting. That she was committed to staying married more than she was committed to the actual health of the relationship. That she was not trying to save the marriage because she loved Jeezy in a way that was about him. She was trying to save it because a second divorce was a story she did not want to be the subject of. Because her public image as a woman who had done the healing and found the real thing was built on this specific marriage being the one that lasted.
Divorce is just experiencing death a lot.
Walking away from it meant acknowledging that the story she had been telling was not the full picture. That framing, that Jeannie wanted to be married more than she wanted to be in this marriage, is devastating if true. It means Jeezy spent years inside a relationship where his actual well-being was secondary to his wife's need to present a particular version of their life to the world. That he was a supporting character in the image she was protecting rather than the person she was choosing. And then came the Mario Lopez question, the shadow that has been hanging over this entire story since before the divorce was filed. Jeannie and Mario Lopez were co-hosts at Extra for years. She has acknowledged openly that Mario was her high school celebrity crush. During their time working together, she even described the awkwardness of running into him every day and feeling some kind of way about it, a comment she delivered with laughs and deflection, but that landed differently for a lot of people who were already watching her marriage to Jeezy closely. The rumors that there was something more than friendship between Jeannie and Mario did not start with the divorce announcement. They were circulating before the filing, fed by what fans described as visible chemistry, by comments and behavior on social media that suggested intimacy beyond what professional friendship typically produces. Mario's own activity, liking comments that implied something more was going on, added fuel to a story that, on its own, might have died quickly. But nothing dies quickly when the people at the center of it are not clearly and categorically shutting it down. Jeezy's side has been deliberately vague about this. His people have not confirmed an affair. They have not denied it either. What they have done is let the speculation exist alongside the broader narrative of Jeannie being someone whose behavior behind closed doors warranted Jeezy leaving. Whether that behavior included something with Mario Lopez, or whether the Mario rumors are a separate and unrelated piece of gossip that the divorce drama has amplified, those are questions without confirmed answers. But the fact that Jeezy's camp has not moved to kill that narrative suggests that it is not something they find entirely inconvenient. What is not speculation is the documented reality of what the divorce proceedings produced. Jeannie did not simply accept Jeezy's decision and move quietly toward an amicable separation. She filed domestic violence allegations, 4 specific incidents across the marriage, physical details, locations, dates. She described being struck, being choked, being grabbed hard enough to tear her clothing. She described finding a loaded weapon accessible to their toddler. She put all of that on the record in documents that are part of the legal history of this marriage, whether anyone is comfortable with that or not. Jeezy denied everything, called it malicious and designed to tarnish his character. Said his only concern was being an active father to Monaco and that the truth would come out through proper channels. And then he kept playing the evolved man in his interviews. Calm, composed, speaking about himself in the language of someone who has chosen peace over conflict, who has decided that engaging with ugliness would compromise his integrity. That composure has been the source of significant public sympathy for him, because a man who says almost nothing provocative while being publicly accused of serious things reads, on the surface, as someone with nothing to prove and enough self-possession to let the truth move at its own pace. But composure and innocence are not the same thing. And a man who was also saying in those same interviews that he had been getting up every day and playing a role, that manipulation and lying had been part of his daily experience in that house, was not exactly maintaining neutrality. He was building a narrative, carefully, brick by brick, in a way that gave him distance from the specifics while still shaping how the public understood the overall story. The cryptic Instagram post was the most visible piece of that narrative construction, too focused on who I am becoming to focus on who is not coming with me. Fans decoded it instantly as a statement about Jeannie, about her being the weight he had released in order to keep ascending. It framed the divorce not as a failure or a mutual loss, but as a man's necessary shedding of something that was holding him back. It positioned him as the protagonist of his own continuing journey, and her as a chapter that had served its purpose and been closed. For Jeannie, who by all accounts did not see the divorce coming and was fighting for the marriage even after he had already decided, that framing was a specific kind of cruelty. She was not a weight he outgrew. She was a woman who had changed fundamental things about herself, who she would marry, whether she would have children, based on what she believed they were building together. And she found out the marriage was over from a newspaper headline while he was crafting his image as the man who chose peace. The fact that insiders say Jeannie was still actively trying to save the marriage in the weeks around the filing, that she was investing effort in finding common ground, demonstrating commitment to preserving what they had, makes his decision to proceed without a direct conversation even harder to justify. You can leave a marriage. People leave marriages. But the way you leave a person says as much about who you are as whether you leave at all. And Jeezy's exit, silent, handled through attorneys, revealed to her through a press cycle rather than a private conversation, is not the exit of a man who respected the person he was leaving. It is the exit of a man who had decided the narrative management was more important than the human courtesy. That is the disturbing detail underneath all the other disturbing details. Not the allegations, not the Mario Lopez rumors, not even the question of whose behavior inside the marriage was worse. The most disturbing thing Jeezy has revealed about this marriage, through his own words, his own timeline, his own choices, is that the entire time Jeannie was living inside a real relationship, he was managing an image of one. That the peace he said he found when he finally left is the peace of a man who no longer has to perform. And that the performance, for him, was the marriage itself. Jeannie brought him credibility. She brought him the family man chapter he needed to complete the reformed rapper narrative. She changed herself to be the partner he said he wanted. And when he had what he needed from the arrangement, the book, the image, the proof that he had evolved, he filed. Not with a conversation, not with honesty, with paperwork and a cryptic Instagram caption. The fans who have been hardest on Jeannie in all of this, who have said she was never able to keep a man, that she was bossy and toxic, that she pushed him away with her nature, are reading the surface of a story whose depth runs in a different direction. They are taking Jeezy's framing at face value and applying it to a woman who, whatever her flaws, was present and trying while he was already gone. That does not make Jeannie a saint. She is a complicated person who has said and done things across her public life that are worth examining honestly. The dominant nature she describes in herself is real. The pressure she apparently placed on the marriage's public image is real. Whatever the truth is about her closeness with Mario Lopez is a question that has not been answered cleanly. None of that disappears because Jeezy handled his exit the way he handled it. But the specific details he is now revealing, that he was getting up every day playing a role, that peace and authenticity were absent, that manipulation and dishonesty were part of his daily experience, deserve to be weighed against the full context of who was asking him to play that role and why. And that context points directly at the image management that Jeannie invested so heavily in, the public facade of a perfect love story that required both of them to perform whether or not the performance reflected reality. He is finally saying some of that out loud, carefully, with enough distance from specifics to maintain deniability. But the direction is clear, and the picture it paints of Jeannie Mai as a wife, controlling, image-obsessed, more committed to being married than to the actual man she was married to, is not the picture she spent years asking her audience to believe. The question now is whether Jeannie addresses it directly or continues to respond through the careful oblique language of Instagram captions and interview quotes that cut without naming. She has been effective at that. She has earned genuine public sympathy through it. But Jeezy is now being specific enough, in enough public forums, that general statements about betrayal and being undervalued are going to stop being sufficient as a response. Because the disturbing details he is revealing are not just about their marriage. They are about who she is. And that is a different conversation entirely. The public has been operating on two separate tracks with this story since the divorce was announced, and those tracks have never fully merged into one coherent understanding. The first track is Jeannie's, the blindsided wife, the woman who gave up her resistance to marriage and motherhood for a man who was already planning to leave, the person who found out from a press cycle rather than a conversation. That track generates sympathy, and it generates it genuinely because the specific cruelty of what Jeezy did in terms of timing and communication is documented and real. The second track is the one Jeezy has been slowly and carefully building. The man who was suffering inside a marriage that looked healthy from the outside and was quietly destroying him from the inside. The man who endured manipulation and dishonesty and the relentless pressure of maintaining an image while his actual well-being was eroding. The man who finally made a choice about his own mental health after sitting in silence for as long as he could stand it. What makes this story genuinely difficult to resolve is that both tracks can be simultaneously true. Jeezy can have handled the exit with a coldness that was cruel to Jeannie, while also having been in a genuinely suffocating environment inside that marriage. Jeannie can have been blindsided and devastated while also having been the source of pressure and control that made the environment what it was. Real relationships are not clean enough for one person to be entirely right and the other entirely wrong. And this one, which was always more complex than its public presentation suggested, is no exception. What Jeezy's recent revelations are doing, and why they matter beyond the gossip value, is shifting the weight of the public narrative in a way that complicates the sympathetic picture of Jeannie that has dominated this story since the divorce became public. Because for months, the dominant framing has been of a woman who was wronged, who was discarded, who had given everything and received a newspaper headline in return. And that framing is not wrong. The facts of how the exit was handled support it. But the picture of what was happening inside that marriage, delivered in Jeezy's own words across multiple public appearances, adds a dimension that the wronged wife narrative does not account for. A wife who needed the marriage to look a certain way to the world, regardless of what it felt like to the man inside it, is not a victim in the same uncomplicated sense. A woman whose dominant nature did not soften in the private spaces where her husband needed something different from her is not simply the person the divorce happened to. And a marriage where one partner was apparently more invested in the image than the substance is not a story about one person doing wrong to another. It is a story about two people who wanted different things and could not bridge the gap, even if one of them walked away with significantly more public sympathy than the other. Jeezy said he went as deep as his integrity would allow before making his decision. That specific phrasing suggests a man who believed he was absorbing things he should not have had to absorb, and who chose a boundary rather than continuing to cross it. Whether his integrity was the right measuring stick, whether the line he drew was drawn in the right place, whether the way he communicated his decision honored the relationship they had built, those are all legitimate questions. But the underlying claim that there was something inside that marriage worth protecting himself from is not something that can simply be dismissed as post-divorce narrative management. The people who were close to both of them before and during the marriage are not universally reading this as Jeezy rewriting history for his benefit. Some of them are nodding. Some of them are saying privately what they will not say publicly, that the Jeannie inside that house was not the Jeannie on television, that the gap between the persona and the person was significant enough to be a real problem for someone trying to build a genuine life with her. That is not the same as saying she deserved to have the marriage end the way it ended. It is not the same as saying the allegations she filed were fabricated or that her pain is not real. It is simply the acknowledgement that there is more to this story than the version that generates the most sympathy for the most sympathetic seeming party. And Jeezy, who has been letting that acknowledgement build slowly through careful words and strategic silences, is now saying enough that the public can start to form its own picture. The picture is not flattering to either of them, but it is real in a way that the curated version of their relationship never was. So here is where this sits. Jeezy is on record saying he spent this marriage getting up every day playing a role. That peace, real people, and real connection were absent. That manipulation and dishonesty were part of what he had to absorb. That he went as deep as his integrity would allow before he decided he had to leave. And the picture that emerges of a woman who was more committed to the image of the marriage than the reality of the man inside it is significantly darker than the one Jeannie has been presenting to the world. Do you think Jeezy's account of what Jeannie was like as a wife is credible? Or is this a man rewriting his own exit to protect the brand he has spent years building? And does the way he handled the divorce, the silence, the paperwork, the Instagram caption, change how you read everything he is now saying about her? Drop your honest take in the comments. Both sides of this story deserve to be heard, and neither one is clean. Hit that like and subscribe, because this situation is still developing and every new detail changes the picture.